Michael, mic check, 1, 2. Welcome, sir.
You got me? Hey, Andrew, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Michael? We appreciate you being here today on behalf of myself, my team, and the speakers.
What's that?
We appreciate you being here today on behalf of my team, myself, and the speakers.
Well, thanks for having me. Appreciate that also.
How you doing, Michael? My name is Noah. Welcome to the aquarium. We're very excited to host you today.
Nice to meet you all, and we're ready to go. Thank you.
Let's rock and roll. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to give a warm welcome to Michael Franzese. He's a former capo of the Colombo family, son of underboss Sonny Franzese, one of the most prolific figures of a major crime family to walk around publicly without witness protection and actually survive. He's a public speaker, and he's done a lot of great work in the social media space as of late. So if you haven't heard of him, this is a good time to sit down, get comfy, and get to know him. Michael, I hope that was a fair intro. And if you don't mind, do you want to start with talking a bit about the Colombo crime family origins?
Well, yeah, I mean, Colombo family is one of the 5 New York Mafia Cosa Nostra families. And it was, formed back when Lucky Luciano, way back in the 30s and the 40s, started to organize, the various mob groups, Italian mob groups that existed here in the United States, mostly in New York, Chicago, and places in the Northeast. And it was originally the Profaci family. Joe Profaci was the original boss. And then Joe Colombo took over a few years later. So strong family. My dad was the underboss of that family back in the 60s. And then I became a made member, took the oath in 1975, came in as a soldier, then was appointed as a capo regime or captain in 1980. And, spent the next several years of my life as a captain in that family. So all in all, I was there for about a little over 20 years.
And Mike,
Noah, as great as your introduction was, we forgot one thing. Michael also was a pre-med student back in his day.
Yep.
Yes. Well, prior to my dad going to prison and getting a 50-year prison sentence, which was really the motivation for me to leave school, get on the street, and try to help him out, I was a pre-med student. I was going to be a doctor until the plans changed.
Yep. And
Michael, did you want to be a doctor, or was that motivation? Motivation because of an ulterior motive?
My dad really wanted that. My mom wanted that. I mean, they wanted me to be the first professional in the family at that point. So quite honestly, I was motivated in that direction, but I think it was more to please my parents than it was for my own desire.
And it was the old school Italian way, because I also am Italian as well, and it was the old school Italian way, correct? Kind of, go to school, get a job, get a nice job, something that's more sustainable, and you live the rest of your life that way.
Exactly, especially for those, that immigrated here from Italy early on. And, they wanted their children to succeed in a certain way. And I think that I was a product of that.
So yeah, to take a few steps back, Michael, I did want to talk about the transfer of power to Joe Colombo. I believe that happened in 1963 based on my research, and I'm curious to know how he was chosen and how a boss of a family is normally chosen.
Well, yeah, in Joe Colombo's case, the reason he was appointed, there was a lot of unrest among the families at that point in time, and Joe Colombo was actually given a contract on Carlo Gambino's life. And rather than carry out that contract, he went and warned Carlo Gambino about it. And as a result, obviously, Gambino lived. And through a series of circumstances, because of Colombo's warning him, Carlo was a pretty powerful guy at that time. They all sponsored him in becoming boss of the Colombo family. So that's really how he took over when Profaci passed away. And unfortunately, he didn't have a very long run because, he was there was an assassination attempt on his life about 10 years later, a little less than that. And he eventually died from the gunshot wounds. I think it was 1971 when he was shot at a big rally that we had in Columbus Circle.
And Michael, if I'm not mistaken, that was the first time that you actually experienced or saw with your own eyes the violence that happens in that life. And at that point, you were still a med student, right? And that's kind of the pivot moment for you where you decided, hey, I'm going to pass the mic to you. And so let us know what happened at that point.
Well, yeah, Joe Colombo had started the Italian American Civil Rights League, which was formed because his son, Joe Jr., who I knew very well, was indicted on a case that they felt was a fraudulent indictment. And Joe Colombo wasn't going to let that happen because, the FBI had really used some wrong methods, I would say, in going after guys that were associated with the mafia at that time. And Joe Colombo was very offended. He wasn't going to have his son go down like that. So he started this league where we were picketing the FBI building on 69th Street and 3rd Avenue in Manhattan. And I was one of the first to get on the picket line because I thought that league would eventually help my father, who I believe until this day was framed on a bank robbery case. So, and over a period of 2 years, the league grew from several hundred to several thousand. And it was actually a national um, in 1971. I was 20 years old. I was still a pre-med student at that time. And we had about 50,000 people on that day at that rally. And I had just been up on the stage, and Joe Colombo had given me some brochures about the league to hand out near Central Park. And as I stepped away from him and started to go down the steps of the stage, that's when the shots rang out. And, I heard Joey was hit. Joey's been hit. And he went down. And then eventually, within a few seconds, the person that shot him, a fellow by the name of Jerome Johnson, he was shot and killed. But it was mass hysteria at that point. And yes, it was the first time that I had witnessed really an event like that. And it was kind of eye opening. And it kind of changed my perspective on things. And from that point on, I told my dad, "Look, I got to do something to help you get out of prison. Something's terribly wrong here with the system," and that's how it started.
Michael, you mentioned right now, which I thought was very linking to today's time, that your father possibly, we have suspicion that he could be framed. I think that's very, very key that you said that, because within the recent events that happened today, all the gaslighting the Fed's been doing, all the Twitter file stuff, all that stuff that's happened today, I feel like there's very room for that to be, not just a conspiracy theory, but actual the truth at some point in time. I want to go to Smokey here, and then I believe Tout also had his hand up.
Hey, Michael. Great to meet you. But yeah, I've got a question. If you growing up, like, what was the sense of belonging like being, growing up in with this organization around, and then eventually getting into the organization?
Well, my father was a very prominent figure in that life. And I compare him, the amount of media attention and law enforcement investigation on him was really tantamount to what John Gotti had later on. My dad was the Gotti of the 60s, and he was tried 3 times by the state for grand larceny and murder, various charges. And he was in the news, practically every day. We didn't have social media back then, but between television and print media, he was there just about every day. We had law enforcement surveilling our family 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for several years. So I grew up in an atmosphere where I loved my dad very much, and I did not like police. I did not like law enforcement. I saw them as the enemy, that they were harassing my dad, harassing my family. So I grew up in that kind of an environment, and I really, I had an idealist view of my dad. He was my hero, my idol. So I grew up with that mindset. And even though my dad didn't bring the life into the home, obviously I knew who he was. You couldn't avoid that. And I knew what he was about. Um, so it was, and we were Italian family, so very family orientated. A lot of my dad's crew at that time would be at the house quite a bit. So I grew up in that environment, and it wasn't a normal childhood by any means. My dad was getting arrested all the time. We were visiting him in prison and going to see him on trial. So it was a crazy kind of upbringing. But I will say this, my dad was tried in the state 3 times. He was acquitted, found not guilty 3 times. And then the feds indicted him for masterminding a nationwide string of bank robberies. Allegedly, he ordered these bank robberies. He was convicted and sentenced to 50 years in prison. But I will tell you this, he did 40 years on that 50. But I will tell you this, I will take this to my grave, and this is for everyone. I investigated that case thoroughly. We spoke to every witness. They recanted their testimony. We gave them lie detector tests to prove they lied at the trial. They were actually the bank robbers. All they did was say that my father ordered it, and it was never true. And my dad did 40 years for a crime he didn't commit. And, relative to what's happening, well, I don't want to get too far off. I mean, hopefully I answered that question and we can continue this, but hopefully, I answered your question.
Thank you, Michael. Next, we've got Tote. What's going on, Tote?
Hey, Michael, pleasure to meet you. Yeah, I was just listening to for your story about leaving med school to help your father after his ordeal, and it sounds really familiar.
I'm not hearing anything, so.
Oh man, swap me down. No, I think Michael can't hear me.
Yeah, I think there's a
Sorry, Mike.
bug there with Spaces, Michael.
Twitter Spaces is still a move in Twitter Spaces is still a work in progress type thing. Elon's got to fix this. Tote was talking. Smokey, we can go back to you really quickly, then we'll bring Tote back up and we'll get back to him.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. So, Michael, I'm pretty sure it was you. I was watching a clip. I think of you talking about a like a gas station, like a gas racket. Was that you? Like talking about that? Like it would like upsell the gas.
Yeah, that was me. Basically, I was, I was involved in a scheme. Actually, was one of the masterminds of the scheme to defraud the government out of tax on every gallon of gasoline. It's what I eventually went to prison for. But I had devised a scheme along with another gentleman that we ran for almost 8 years. And I had over 350 gas stations I either owned or operated. And I had 18 wholesale licenses that enabled us to collect the tax on every gallon of gasoline. And then we devised a scheme not to pay the government. And basically, that's it, just breaking it down to its most simplest terms. And eventually, after an 8-year run, my partner got in trouble on an unrelated matter, became an informant, and that's how the whole thing kind of blew up. I eventually took a plea. I had 10 years in prison as a result of a racketeering case based upon this, and I had a $15 million restitution, $5 million in forfeitures. So that was the consequence for that action. But yeah, that was me. I mean, I was one of the major people involved in that the whole gas scheme.
Michael, for some context for the listeners as well, you were making, I guess it was what, $5 to $8 million a week on the gas station business.
Yeah, just to clarify, I mean, it wasn't $5 to $8 million a week in my pocket. We were actually bringing into the organization between $8 and $10 million a week. At that point, we were selling 500 million gallons of gas a month and taking down 25, 30, 40 cents a gallon, depending upon how we priced it out and what the market was at that time. But it was probably, quite honestly, and the feds have stated this, it was probably the most lucrative operation that we as an organized crime group had since the days of prohibition. I mean, it was a tremendous amount of money at that time, and that's what I eventually went down for.
It wrote the history books for sure. Noah, back to you.
Yeah, so Michael, I actually wanted to go back to that moment. Joe Colombo got taken out and his reign ended. You ultimately decided to join the mafia. I'm sure there was a bit of pushback from your family, but you would set your ways on it. And based on my research, after a year and a half, you were a made man. So I'm curious to know what the normal time frame is, because it seems a bit fast, and what the process is like, when it's the decision, and also what the ceremony was like. I would love for you to take us through that whole process, that whole story.
Sure. Yeah, I was on an accelerated path, I would say, but to give some explanation to that, in 1950, all the families had decided they weren't going to bring any new members into the family. So what they stated was the books were closed. The only time they would bring another member into the family, that took the oath and became a made man, was if somebody died from one of the families, they were allowed to replace him. But other than that, they weren't bringing in new members. That lasted for almost 20 years. And then in the early 1970s, they opened the books again. And that's for all the families, all 5 families in New York. And I came in under that, opening of the books. So I was a recruit for about almost 2 years. And the process was, quite honestly, I had to prove myself worthy to become a member. I had to do whatever I was told at that point in time. Could have been something very menial, could have been something very, serious. And you have to prove yourself. And so I was in that recruit period with people that were waiting for 20 years to become members. So, and I actually took the oath in 1975 on Halloween night. It was myself and 5 other gentlemen, 6 of us that night. You take it individually. It's a very solemn ceremony, dimly lit room late at night. And they wanted you to understand the seriousness of what you were getting involved in. And, you were well prepared for that moment. You don't know when it's coming because for security reasons, they don't announce the night that you're going to get made. They just tell you, hey, be here today with a suit. But they tell you that every day. So it's not like it's any different than any other day. And then when they feel you've passed the test and you've proved yourself, that's the way it happens for you. And that's how it happened for me. And like I said, it was 1975. I was 24 years old. So I was one of the younger guys for sure.
What was that moment like for you?
It was very exhilarating. I had a very idealistic view of the life at that point. It was something my father was a part of. So not only was he now my dad, but I was united with him in blood in a different way. I took it very seriously. I take it very seriously today, even though I don't consider myself a member of that life anymore. When you come into the life, you don't sign a contract. There's no retirement age. What I know about the life is in my heart and my mind. It's not easily forgotten. I spent, over 20 years there, and basically I grew up in it with my dad. So, when you come in, you have an idealistic view of it. It's something I can't describe. It's a brotherhood. It's men among men that are supposed to have respect for one another. When I came into the life, they said to me, Michael, wherever you go in the world, you're going to have brothers to back you up. Don't ever worry about your wife, your daughter, your sister, your mother. Nobody's ever going to bother them. It's a very, I think one of the most powerful relationships in life are among men that, have respect and honor and belief in one another. It's like a brotherhood. So, I looked at it that way, and that night was very exhilarating for me.
Yeah, and I think a lot of young men, even today, feel like they need something like that, this coalition of brotherhood, and they're missing it. So I can see why you were drawn to it in your mid-20s, and I'd be curious to know. And I think this is probably an obvious, probably an obvious question, but I'd imagine it was very uncomfortable at times, especially making that transition from a med student where you were academically inclined and you had a very structured life to a life on the streets. Can you take us a bit more, or can you take us into that? And how do you mentally step outside of things that make you uncomfortable?
Well, yeah, that's a good point. But understand that I did grow up basically with a very prominent figure in that life. So it wasn't that it was foreign to me. I understood it, and I did grow up with disdain. I have to use that word for both the government and law enforcement because I thought they were dishonest. I thought they framed my father. I watched them harass our family. I had many incidents with them, even as a young boy, when they were harassing our family back then. So I grew up, with that mindset. But yeah, so making the transition, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know if I can't say I wasn't cut out for the life. I was because I succeeded and did well during my time in there. But there were things that I had to do that made me very uncomfortable. I wasn't comfortable doing them, and I described that to people. I would somehow step out of myself and accomplish what I needed to because you don't back down in that life. You never say you can't do something. You do it. You got to obey orders. There's no discussion about it. When you're given an order, you have to do it. And if I was anything, I wanted to be a good soldier. I wanted to show my father and everybody else that I was worthy of being in that life. So you kind of step outside of yourself and you accomplish what you need to, And I don't know if that's a unique quality. I can't say. I can be honest with you that there were some people in that life that enjoyed doing things that others may not enjoy. It was just they had a different makeup, a different chemistry, but that wasn't me. Um, so I guess I had to adapt and adjust to being that person.
Well, Michael, was there a point in time, back then when you were in this lifestyle, and then you really, the very first time you realized you were actually in it? So obviously, saying you're in it is one different thing than actually experiencing it. Was there kind of a paradigm shift of when you were actually in this and realized, oh shit, I'm actually in this life. This is what it means to be part of this organization now?
Yes, because your eyes really are open when you're in the life. Remember, before you're an actual made member, before you take the oath, you're not privy to certain things. It's an elite position when you take that oath, and now people can share things with you that are part of that life. Before that, you only know so much. So even though you have an idea and you understand, until you really get in it and you be part of it, it's a learning experience. At least for me. Listen, I wasn't around on the street for 20 years like some of the other guys were. I was a pre-med student up until the 2 years or so that I was a recruit, and then became a member. Even though I lived my father, I was my father's son, but I didn't go out with him on his business. So it was an eye-opening experience for me. And I saw some things that I said, wow, this is real, this is reality. But I adapted and I adjusted, and I wanted to be the best possible mob guy I could be. But I will say this: in that life, there are two kind of divisions. You're either a real gangster or you're a racketeer. Now let me explain. We had 115 made guys in our family, guys that actually took the oath. We had a lot of associates. I had a big crew, but guys that actually took the oath. Out of the 115 of us, maybe 20 of us were real earners. We were the ones bringing the money into the family, bringing the deals in. I was fortunate. I knew how to use that life to benefit me in business. I had a head for business, so I used it well. But the other 95 guys, who's got a no-show job, who's got a gambling situation, they're just scraping together a living. So it was those guys that had to do most of the heavy work because, you still got to prove your value. You got to contribute to the family in some way. So the gangsters were not really capable of being a racketeer, or they would have been. They would have been earning a lot of money. They just couldn't do it. A racketeer, they want to protect you because they want the money to continue to flow. However, you still have to have gangster in you because you're still going to be called upon to do gangster things, if you understand. But that's kind of the division in the life. So me, I was more of a racketeer. I brought a lot of money into the family, so they protected that. Um, so I had to do less of what the normal gangster would have to do because they were in the trenches more than me, because that was their responsibility. So hopefully I explained that and you understand.
Yeah, I appreciate the insight. Obviously, those skills learn that time within the organization, that would be soft skills, are definitely transitory to what you're doing now with your current businesses and the products you're dropping, etc. Before we go on to that, though, I want to get to books and then go back to toe, and then we can move this conversation forward.
Sure. Was that
What's
a
up,
question?
Michael?
Did
Man,
I miss something? Or?
no, Michael. I'm books because I've read a lot of books, and I'm the fastest reader in Web3, so I got the name Books. But I've been watching you for a while, man. Listening to you for a while, man, on YouTube, and seeing your stuff all over Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. What does someone like yourself, like with your past, and definitely lived a crazy life for the amount of time that you've been here? What made you enter the podcast game, the writing books game? Like, you took it by storm. You're extremely successful at it. You're doing great. But what got you there? And how'd you blow up so quickly? Damn, I don't think he could hear me, guys.
Hey,
Michael,
Michael, were you able to hear books? I'm not sure if you caught his question.
No, I didn't hear anything. It was total silence. So,
Andrew, I'm gonna step down. Bring me back.
Okay, books.
Yeah, sorry about that, Michael. There is a bug with Twitter Spaces where oftentimes you can't hear a certain guest speaking. But Just to continue the conversation while Books comes back up, you mentioned how big your crew was, and it seems like you guys hit the ground running. What were some of the hustles you and your crew typically got involved with to make money early on? I know that you guys had this you had this massive scheme with the gasoline, but I wanted to start from the beginning. How did you guys kind of make your name, or at least build up that foundation when you're, in your mid to late 20s?
Well, I made a decision early on that, we were going to be a crew of money earners. I wanted guys around me that could carry their own weight, that could bring some good deals in that we in turn could turn into money uh, for ourselves and the family. And, what I had told my guys, I had about 15 guys around me that were close in my crew. I probably had 300 guys around me when I got into the gas business that were part of everything that we're doing. But I would say 15 close guys in my crew. And I would tell them early on, I would say, listen, here's the deal if you're going to be with me. If you want to become a made member of this life, this is not the place to be because I am not going to propose, I'm not going to sponsor anybody to become a made guy. Why would I say that? Because when you sponsor somebody and that person becomes a made man, well, you lose him. He's not you. He's his own man at that point in time. So he's not part of your crew anymore. So what I said is, I'm not going to put effort and time and work into you and make you wealthy and then lose you. You go out on your own. I said, so if you want to get made, if this is your aspiration, your desire, I'm freeing you up. You can go anywhere you want. You can't do that here. I said, however, if you want to make money, this is the place to stay because we're going to earn. Well, nobody left. I mean, money was more important at that point. They all stood with me. So, you know, what did we do early on? I mean, there was so many different things we got involved in. I mean, obviously, I had a numbers business on the street. I had about 12 or 13 bookmakers, guys taking illegal bets that were under my wing, under my control. And just about every bookmaker out there that's taking bets illegally, somehow, some way, they're associated with an organized crime figure because we lent the money, number one, and bookmakers give their clients credit, and oftentimes guys don't want to pay if they lose. Well, they would come to us because we were good at collecting money. We made sure that the bookmakers got their money. So I had a number of bookmakers that worked under me, and I took a cut, obviously, of their operation. I had a lot of money out on the street, loan sharking, Shylock money, where I was put it out at a decent interest rate. Mostly, businessmen would come to me at that point when they couldn't borrow from the bank or whatever their reasoning was, and I would lend them the money, and they'd pay me interest, or I would take a percentage of their business, whatever the deal was at that time. And also as far as my personal business, I had two automobile dealerships, legitimate dealerships that I owned. I had a movie production company. I had a distribution company. I had a number of restaurants that I was involved in. I managed a couple of artists at that time. So I had a pretty diverse portfolio, I would say, because I was very aggressive when I was younger and when I was in that life. And again, I knew how to use that life to benefit me in business, and it's a good leverage. It's a good tool if you know how to use, what's available to you from that life. You can do pretty well. The other side of that is, I had 18 arrests. I had a 14-man agency task force that was assigned to me, and their whole objective was to put me in prison. I went to trial 5 times. I was indicted by Rudy Giuliani on a big case. I had 7 indictments. 2 of them were federal racketeering indictments. So, along with all the good stuff, I had a lot of pressure and a lot of heat all the time from law enforcement. It came from my father initially because his name was big. And then, I picked up the mantle and they came right on me. So, there was a lot going on through my time in that life.
Michael, I definitely want to dive more into that, but I wanted to take a step back and even discuss a bit more about your time as a capo, and when did you become a capo, and when did you start this gasoline scheme? Like, what went into making that work, making that a reality, and how long did it go on for? How much money were you pulling in? I know you're very well known, not just within your own family, but within other families, just from how much money you were bringing in and how many people were getting fed from this scheme.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was when my father was released on parole, I became a MAID member in '75. My father came out on parole briefly, I think in '77, and I was his acting captain because he was a captain at that time. But because he was on parole, he couldn't meet with anybody, associate with anybody. So I was his acting captain. So that's still an official position. In other words, I acted on behalf of my father. Then in 1980, the boss of my family, Carmine Persico, made me an official captain. And I was in that position until '95 when I consider myself really formally removed from that life. Look, the process with the gas business. Somebody that was in that business came to me. Uh, he had a legitimate gas operation. He had a couple of gas stations out on Long Island, and there were two fellas from another family that were extorting him for money. They were shaking him down. So he came to me for help because I was kind of the guy on Long Island, pretty well known. And eventually I helped him get rid of these guys. I backed them off. And then I went into business with him and we devised this. He came up with the idea to defraud the government out of taxes. And I was able to expand on it, put all the necessary elements together, and help him devise the scheme that really made it very difficult for the government to understand what we were doing and penetrate the kind of wall that we put up around the operation. I was able to acquire licenses that he couldn't get. I had 18 licenses and I had political connections to get them. So, again, at that time, we grew this operation over 8 years. Originally, in the first week that we were in business, we brought in over $300,000. And I grew that 300,000 over 8 years into close to $10 million a week. And I had the Russians from Brighton Beach and Brooklyn that were my partners. They had a independent gas stations back in Brooklyn. I brought them into the fold, and it was a tremendous operation. And during that time, I mean, I had my own jet plane. I had a Lear 25A. I had a Bell helicopter that I bought. I had a house in Florida, a house in New York, a house in California. I had 300 guys under us. I had bought a big terminal in Long Beach. I bought it off of British Petroleum where we were storing part of our gas. Was We needed the terminal in order to um, continue the scheme without getting into all the complications in the system itself. The terminal that held about 3.5 million gallons was very helpful in keeping the government off our back in the reporting and accounting process. So it was a very intricate scheme that we had put together and devised. And the government, they couldn't tear apart. They couldn't penetrate it. They didn't know what we were doing. The only way they found out was when my partner became an informant and he basically told them. Other than that, we'd probably still be in operation. I don't think they would have figured it out yet, but that's yesterday's news. But, look, it was a lot of money and we were riding pretty high at the time. But again, eventually you're going to go down. You're not going to do that forever. And I did, and I paid the price.
It was for sure a moment in time that we will all remember. Even just kind of hearing about it is super, super legendary. I can only imagine what it was at that point in time. Michael, before we resume, I want to get a mic check on Books really quickly, ensure that everyone can hear him this time. Books, can we get a mic check, please?
Sure.
Yeah, can you guys hear?
Michael,
I
can you
can
hear
hear.
Books?
Yeah, I
Perfect,
can hear.
perfect.
Michael, what's up? What's up, everyone? Michael, man, I've been following you, listening to you for some time now on other platforms, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, you name it. And you've taken like that podcast game by storm. I mean, you've been on every big podcast. You're having your own big podcasts, and it's awesome. It's awesome. But to see someone that's had such a crazy, crazy life, I mean, it's like you lived for the last 300 years, man. You've done a lot. You've been through a lot. What got you to like enter that podcast game, and how did you do so well so fast in the podcast game?
Well, Books, I really appreciate that. Thank you very much, and thank you for following me. Listen, if it wasn't, people like yourself, I wouldn't be where I am, on YouTube and all the other platforms. But, Books, I'll be honest with you. When the pandemic hit, I'll never forget. I had about 42 speaking dates postponed because I'm a speaker. I've been speaking for the last 25 years all around the world. And my team came to me and they said, "Well, what are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, I'm not going to do anything." I said, "We can't do anything. I'm going to stay home. It's the first time in 25 years that I'll be home. instead of being out on the road for 35, 40 weeks. And they said, well, why don't you start a YouTube channel? And I said, nah, I don't want to do that. I'm not into social media that much. And they really had to push me to do it. So I didn't realize, I didn't even know this book. Somebody had started a YouTube channel for me like 7 years earlier, and they put one video up there, a 3-minute intro video that I had. I didn't even know that I had it. So they told me, do you know you have a platform? Because it was kind of a new team that I had put together. I said, no, I didn't know that. Anyway, long story short, in July of 2000, when the pandemic hit, we did the first video. And books, I can't explain it. I don't know what to say. We just blew up. And over a period of 30 months, we just passed 1 million subscribers. And, I'm thankful to the people that they have a lot of choices on YouTube. And for those that chose to listen to me, I appreciate it. We just blew up. I know on YouTube, you got to be consistent. That's for sure. They chase me around with a camera. So I sit down 2 days a week. But I enjoy it. And I'm glad people are liking it. And, I've been on many, I probably have, about 750 million views if you add up all the platforms that I've been on. People have been very gracious in having me on, and Jordan Peterson and Patrick Bet-David and Vlad TV and a whole bunch of them. So we've gotten a lot of views, and
Guys, can we
it's
get
really helped.
can we get a round of applause here for Michael on his much success for YouTube and all the podcasts moving forward, please?
Thank you. Well, I thank you. And I do want to say this. I never realized what kind of platform YouTube is, but I tell you, I get recognized so often. I just came back from Florida. I did a speaking date down there. And wherever I go in the airports, I was in the United Kingdom for 2 months over the summer. I had a big speaking tour. People were running out of the pubs to grab a hold of me to take a photo, and I couldn't believe it. And it's all YouTube. So for those of you out there that have any kind of an idea that you think can resonate on YouTube, if you want to get the word out there worldwide and you want to get known, that's the most amazing platform. I can tell you this because I've done a lot of things. I've been in a bunch of documentaries. They're actually now doing a television series on my life that'll go into production shortly. I've done a bunch of things, but nothing is like YouTube. I can tell you that. It's amazing.
Guys, be sure to give Michael a follow on his YouTube channel. Michael, it is Michael Franzese, right? Just your name. I assume it's just that.
Yeah, I think it's just at Michael Franzese. Yes.
Guys, be sure to give him a follow on YouTube. Tell back to you. You did fall off there. Your mic also had some issues similar to Books. Could we get a mic check, please?
Hey, how's it going, Michael? Do you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hey, it's a pleasure to meet you. I was just wondering, was it difficult to adjust from the life you had with the family back to like the normal life of a civilian all of a sudden? I mean, how was it when you first kind of stepped into that realm back into normal life, quote unquote?
That's a great question, and I got to tell you this. You know, there's an old saying: you can take the boy out of Brooklyn, but you can't take Brooklyn out of the boy. What do I mean by that? I mean, I spent over 20 years in that life. I grew up in that life under my dad. I still have tendencies. I can be that person if I don't watch myself. Now, I'm 71 years old. I'm not a kid anymore. So I've been around the block a few times, but there's times when I have to fight off the old, tendencies. If I get upset with somebody or whatever, I have to fight off the old tendencies. But I'll tell you what helps you. I don't ever want to put my wife in a position. My wife waited for me 8 years when I was in prison. I don't want to put her in a position again where I would make a mistake or do something wrong. I don't want to, put my kids through that. I have 7 kids. They went through a lot of stuff when I was away, and as a result of my involvement in that life, I'm a Christian now. I speak in churches. I don't want people to be disappointed, in me. So my point is, you got to surround yourself with good people in life that matter to you, that you don't want to hurt or upset. Now, obviously, I've calmed down a lot. I'm not the same person in every way. I have different, I'm a person of faith now, so I think differently, but you still have to control that person that you once were. It doesn't just go away. Sometimes I'll get off a plane in New York and I'll see somebody that looks kind of shady, and I'm ready to go. I mean, case something happens, I'm ready. So you don't shake it off, you just control it. And you just understand that that's not who you are anymore. You can't act that way. You can't be that person. But it's not easy. I'll be honest with you, it's not easy. You got to surround yourself with the right people. You got to nourish yourself in the right
Michael,
way. You got to feed
I
yourself.
personally
Go ahead.
I personally have this self belief system I call OQP, only quality people, right? And obviously, success and failures kind of dictate who's into that bunch of OQP, only quality people. But Michael, what is your filtering process, your filtering system to determine who should be around you and who shouldn't be around you? Obviously today and even possibly in the years past.
Well, again, I have an advantage because, I spent so many years on the street. I've been around every character you can imagine. So I have kind of an innate sense of people. I know what I want at this point in life. I know what I don't want. I know who I need to be around me and who I don't want to be around me. So this was just a process of maturity, I would think, and I understand what I want in life. So, but it's very important that people understand that you are who you hang out with in this life. You must surround yourself with good people, people that are not going to lead you the wrong way, not going to influence you in the wrong way. And you have to know when to say no and when to cut people out of your life when they're not doing the right thing. And that's something, the only way you acquire that perception is by being conscious of it. You meet somebody, you do your own mental check on this person. You watch, you see, are they there for your benefit? Are they trying to gain on their own? Are they trying to hurt you? Or will they hurt you even if they're not trying to, just by their own behavior? So it's something you really have to. And I have a tendency, I'm a very outgoing guy. I mean, I have a tendency, I draw people to me and I'm drawn to certain people. So I have to, and I'll tell you this too. I think my wife, in many ways, is a better judge of character than I am. She's very perceptive of who's around me and who I get involved with because I'm out there a lot and a lot of people, I meet a lot of people on a daily basis. So, but it's an innate quality that you have to develop if you really want to succeed in life.
I would absolutely agree. So books brought up a great point. You're doing a lot more now than obviously, just the stuff you did back in the organization days. Michael, is there anything else you want to talk about today in terms of, your product, your digital collectibles that you do have called Mob Ties, the books that you have released, the ones that, there's a couple of them, I believe, as well as all the wine that you've created.
Well, yeah, just a couple of things that I think are important. I'm not here just to sell products, but I just actually a couple hours ago I taped a segment for Fox News. Dan Bongino, I think he's running it in prime time tomorrow night on Fox, and basically it was about the government. I wrote a book, Mafia Democracy, and I want my listeners to understand this. This is not about politics. This book, I merely pointed out how we have to keep our public officials accountable because look, I've seen a lot in my life, and I can tell you this that I have never seen the condition of the government as it is today. And people really need to understand and look at our political landscape and understand that our freedoms are being taken away little by little. And when the government imposes upon you, they never give it back. If you give them an inch, they're going to keep that inch and try to take a foot or a yard. We have to be very, very mindful of this, whether they're Republicans or Democrats. The book is bipartisan. I'm just making people aware of the government and how we have to hold them accountable. So, again, I'm not going to get into all the stuff on the book, but you can watch that segment. It's a short one. And hopefully people will buy the book. I've been very pleased with the feedback on the book. People saying, hey, Mike, now I get it. You pointed it out because the government is acting like the mob. People say to me, Michael, the mafia should be running the country. And I say, no, you don't want the mafia running the country. You want a good, legitimate, responsible government running our country because we're a republic. We're a democracy. We need people in charge in that way. But so, I mean, we have that, I'm writing another book. That book is out, Franzese wine now. I'm really, really into it. We're starting to, we started the company within a year. We're doing extremely well. We just got licensed in 41 states. People are loving the wine. We're soon going to be in some of the major stores. We're in about, I don't know, 100 stores nationwide now and restaurants. And we also do a direct to consumer, franzesewine.com. The television series, I'm very pleased with the way it's been developed over the past 2 years. And hopefully it'll go into production, I believe, in April or May of this year. I can't tell you who the actor is that's going to play me. I'm not allowed to reveal it, but I'm happy with their choice. Um, and what else? I mean, and one other thing that I want to mention, and I hope it's not offensive to anybody, but I started listening quite a bit. Andrew Tate got in touch with me, and we kind of communicated a bit. I've also been on Jordan Peterson's podcast, and we've become friendly. The message that these two men, in different ways, obviously, they have different styles and different messages, but they're really trying to tell men how to be men today. And look, I have 5 daughters, and I can tell you some of the things they tell me about some of the guys that they've been with, that they've met in their lives. Guys have to know how to be men. There's a lack of real manhood in this world today, in this country, and I think Andrew Tate was very abrasive in how he gave his message, and I think it was demeaning to women. Even if he didn't mean to be, he was. I'm not about that. I love my wife. I'm married 38 years. I have a lot of respect for my daughters. I respect women in all counts. But men have to be men. And if we're teaching or consulting or inspiring men how to be a man, that's a benefit to women. It's not taking away anything from women. Not at all. So, I'm putting out that message through my new platform, Mob Ties, and hopefully people will look into that and maybe want to get involved. I'm also just about to enter into an arrangement with Mike Tyson, and Mike and I are going to be given that message about how to transform your life, how to be a real man in 2023. We're going to be going out, do some speaking engagements together. So I love Mike. Mike is very honest guy. Whatever's in his head, he doesn't have a real filter. It comes out through his mouth. But he's transformed himself. We're two guys from Brooklyn that have gotten out of a tough lifestyle. So we're hoping to spread that message and hoping to help young men find themselves in life and really go on to be successful and be good citizens and be good to their women. That's what it's all about.
All of the products, Mike, that you just mentioned are currently on your website, correct? Everyone can go check them out if they're very curious on what you just mentioned. All that great stuff.
Yeah. Yes, they're on the website and they're on, I think, some of the social media platforms. They're all on there.
Wonderful. Shield, you did have your hand up. Can we get a quick mic check here?
Mic check, mic check. Michael, can you hear me?
I guess that's a no. Shield dropped down. I'll bring it back up. Reese, can we get a quick mic check on you first?
Yo, mic check. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Michael, it's nice to meet you. How did you ultimately come to the realization and decide to leave the lifestyle? And how are you finding life now? Like when you're going out speaking, who seems to be your target audience? Is it businessmen and entrepreneurs, or does it seem to be different every time you speak?
Yeah, well, let me answer both questions. Why I walked away from the life. I will say this: I never glorify my former life. I call it a bad life, in some ways an evil life. And I want to be clear, I'm not calling the guys evil. I was one of them. I had many friends in that life, many good relationships, many of them that I felt really bad, met with, very serious consequences in their life. Just about everybody I ran with is dead or in prison for the rest of their lives. So, but I don't know any family of any member of that life that hasn't been totally devastated, including my own. Not my wife and kids. I've spared them of that. But I had a mother, my mom died in 2012, 33 years without her husband. And her relationship with my dad was just ugly towards the end because she blamed him for everything that went wrong in our family's life, and rightfully so. And what went wrong? Well, I had a sister that died of an overdose of drugs at the age of 27. My brother was a drug addict for 25 years. If it wasn't for me and my dad, he would have been dead. There's no question. We had to rescue him so many times. My younger sister, 41 years old, she wasn't mentally stable. She died at a young age, at 41. The family was destroyed. And so is so many other families of every member of that life. So it's a bad life. So when I met this young girl at 20 years old that I fell very much in love with and I wanted to marry, I said, am I going to marry this girl and then destroy her life? Because I was such a target. I said, there's no way I'm going to beat this. They're going to get me eventually. You don't last forever on the street. I said, I have to make a choice. It's either her or the life. and I chose her. So getting out of the life, that's another whole, we can spend, 4 more hours on that. I wrote books on it and I speak about it all the time. It was very difficult to make that transition and and survive, because when I left, everybody was pretty upset with me. Contract on my life. My father, for a while, disowned me. I mean, there was a lot of stuff that we had to go through. But I will tell you this: I'm probably the most fortunate person you're ever going to speak to, because I could very easily be dead or in prison for the rest of my life. But I believe God had a different plan and a purpose for me. It's become obvious. But um, so the transition was tough. But that's why I left. I just didn't want to put this girl through what every other family goes through. It wouldn't have been right. It would have been very selfish of me. And he either had to leave her or marry her and leave the life. And I chose to marry her, and it was the best decision I ever made. That young girl saved my life, no question. Saved my freedom and saved my life.
That's an amazing story, Mike. The power of women. Shield, I want to get a mic check for the third time. Hopefully, this is the charm. Go for it.
Mic check, mic check. Michael, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes,
Hey, Michael, how you doing? So,
I'm
you were
good.
just talking. Great. You were just talking about how you didn't like the life, and that's why you left it on and all. What was the factor in you, I guess, making your previous life public? Like what moved you to like share your past life with everybody else?
Great question. And it's nothing I ever planned. Never, ever planned it. I was finishing up I mean, first of all, I had a lot of publicity back in New York and, the Northeast, Florida. You knew who I was. I was indicted in Florida. I had a lot of publicity in New York, maybe a little bit in LA, but, middle America didn't know who I was. But when I was getting released from prison, I spent 8 years and I spent 3 years in solitary confinement. To make a long story short, all the major league teams, pro football, pro baseball, hockey, the NFL, they all came to me while I was in prison, and they asked me to get involved in a video uh, telling our athletes the dangers of gambling, because they knew I had a big gambling operation on the street. Long story short, I got involved in this video. It was a 20-minute video that all the leagues had put together. And, I had made a decision to kind of turn my life around. So I basically in that video said, listen, athletes, this is how we're going to trap you. This is the dangers of gambling. These are the people you shouldn't hang around. Protect yourself, protect your career, and stay away from gambling. It's going to be a problem. And I laid it out, how we trapped them. Well, when I got out of prison, they all came to me and they said, would you take this a step further and speak to our athletes? Because gambling in sports is a big problem, especially on the collegiate level. So I started out speaking to all the pros in 1996 when I was released. And then in 1998, they asked me to speak to the NCAA came to me and they asked me to speak to college students. I've spoken at over 350 universities, Division I and two universities. So that's how I started speaking, and then it just caught on. And because I became a person of faith, churches have asked me to share my testimony. I've shared my testimony at over 1,600 churches in the last 20 some odd years, and different ministries. Then I decided to go into prisons and try to help our young men and women in prison. So I kind of have a prison ministry with that regard. And then it just became very public. It's not that I hired a PR firm. I don't know. I can't explain it. I think, I will tell you this. I've been all over the world. I've been to Singapore, Australia, Bulgaria, Israel, the United Kingdom, all the Caribbean islands speaking. There is such an intrigue with the mob life that I never realized when I was part of that life. All over the world, people are interested. Why? Because of the media, because of Hollywood, the entertainment. They've made guys like Al Capone, John Gotti bigger than life. People are interested in hearing about that genre, and I just became the guy because I was out there talking, and it's been a platform for me. So I mean, that's the only way I can explain it. So this wasn't a, hey, I'm going to go out and be a speaker. It just happened, and it caught on. And once I saw that people were responding to it in the right way, I said, hey, maybe this is my calling in life. So And it's worked out. I mean, I've been doing it for over 20 years now.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, Michael.
You're very welcome.
Michael, you mentioned Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson earlier on. Unfortunately, both of those men that have a great message, despite some of the things that people may disagree with, they are currently in the process of being canceled. Andrew Tate obviously is detained currently, and Jordan Peterson is obviously having issues with his license, and they're making him write the exam again for practices that I think he's very capable of performing. Michael, what's your take on the whole Andrew Tate debauchery? I'll call it a debauchery.
Well, I want to be very measured in how I speak here. I think his message to young men to man up and learn how to be a man's man, a real man in 2023 is positive and is strong because men have been demasculinated. I don't know if it's the feminist movement, I don't know what it is, but you can see the difference in men. So that message is important. Now, the way he delivered it, he was kind of abrasive to women. I'm not going to comment on his guilt or innocence. As far as I'm concerned, anybody that's charged with anything is innocent until proven guilty. You got to see the evidence. I give everybody the benefit of the doubt. I think a lot of the message from Andrew was misunderstood because of the way he delivered it. A lot of people didn't understand where he was coming from. I don't know if he was involved in trafficking or anything else. I can't respond. I don't have that knowledge, and I'm not going to condemn him. I'm not going to say anything. Hopefully, if the system is not corrupt in Romania and the evidence, if there is any, is presented properly, he'll have his day in court, and we'll see at that point. So, but I'm supportive of the message in men being men. That's number one. As far as Jordan Peterson is concerned, he's just a wonderful man. He's a brilliant guy. I got to tell you this. They're trying to take his license away in Canada. They're trying to shut him up. One thing you can't do in life, you can't become an enemy to powerful people. You just can't, because in the current environment, they will take you down. I think Andrew is definitely a product of that. And now Jordan, in a different way, is a product of that because they're trying to take his license. We live in a time when you can't disagree with those in power. Cancel culture, it's horrible. I did a video the other day. I just want to give you an example. Al Capone, he's dead almost 80 years. Al Capone, anytime his name is mentioned, people are more familiar with Al Capone than they are with John F. Kennedy. Several years ago, his house in Miami was bought by a developer that was going to knock it down. That's what they wanted to do. They wanted to just knock the house down and build another one. 25,000 people from the city of Miami signed a petition not to knock his house down because they said it was part of history. It was a relic in Miami. It's a part of the United States history. Now, here they are, people that don't want to knock a mobster's house down. You could call him a mobster, a murderer, a bad guy, and they want to preserve his house because it's part of history. And quite honestly, he is part of history, a major part of history. Whether it's good or bad, he's a major part. Cut to, they want to cancel Christopher Columbus. They want to cancel Abraham Lincoln, George Washington. They want to knock down, all of these monuments to people that actually did some good in America, because at one point in time, maybe they owned slaves, which was the culture at that time. The bottom line is this cancel culture is taken to a point where it's just getting silly. It doesn't make any sense. You want to honor a mobster's house because it's part of history, and yet people that were really part of history and did a good thing for America, you want to cancel them because of some situation that they had years ago. Things are getting so out of control and so out of hand, and I just hope people understand this. And I will tell you this, people. I mean, thank you for giving me this platform. Back in the day, I believe the FBI was partially involved with framing my father. I saw the FBI go outside of the law to do certain things. But, sometimes back then you'll justify it. Well, they were going after mobsters, criminals. It's okay. Even though it's not okay, it's never good for people that are made to enforce the laws, to break the laws, to go after the lawbreakers, because then they think they have the power to break the law all the time. And that's dangerous to all the citizens, because if they do it against the mob guy, eventually they're going to do it against everybody. And that's what's happening. Going to Twitter now and trying to shut them down. politically going after the enemies because they don't agree with, the people in power. This is extremely dangerous. I don't care if it was Republicans do it or Democrats do it. I don't care if it was my own brother doing it. I would stop him because we have a republic that has to be protected. We have rights that have to be protected. And I don't think people realize, because they don't have the experience, they don't have the knowledge to understand that when you give the government this leeway, eventually it comes out against you and against all of us. And, again, when I have a platform, I mean, look, I'll be honest with you too. I would be much more vocal if I didn't think that they would cancel me, because this is my platform, and I try to give out good information. I'm not always complaining about the government, but people have to make them aware. We have to be knowledgeable. I'll end it with this just thing. I don't want you to think I'm ranting. If you have a partner, your spouse, your partner, if they lie to you once, well, okay, stuff happens. They lie to you twice, you start getting a little leery. A third, a fourth time, hey, that's it. You're a liar. I don't want any part of you. I can't exist with you. I can't cohabit with you. But yet our politicians get on every single day and they lie to us. They make promises they don't keep. We catch them red handed on lies. And what do people say? Well, it's politics. It's not politics, it's lying. You don't replace a lie with the excuse that it's politics, because these lies affect our very lives. And so, what can we do? Hold them accountable. No, this is not an excuse. You either do the right thing or we vote you out of office. We hold them accountable, and that's the whole thing. And look, I'm 71 years old. I'm not worried about myself, but I have kids, I have grandkids, and I believe this is going to be a different America. It's already becoming a different America, and not the America that we want. And I just pray that people realize this. And Republican, Democrat, conservative, whatever, just put the right people in office and hold them accountable to doing the right thing for the people of this country.
No, we undoubtedly have a problem worldwide where we people now believe in, I guess, guilty until proven innocence, which is completely wrong. I also would go and say that you're absolutely right with politicians and all the politics that's currently going on. It's all character flaw, and I say this often, and I'll say it again here. I have no problem saying it. I think that America doesn't have a gun problem; they have a user problem. I always blame the user, and not the one kind of not the thing being forced. Not a it's not. It is a user problem, not a gun problem. I think it applies to many areas in life. Noah, back to you.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, we've been taking audience questions, and I'm gonna go ahead and just pass it to Doug. But Michael, I will say one thing with regard to Jordan Peterson, because I am a big fan of his work. A lot of people just look at his politics and they don't recognize that well before he got famous in 2016, he had hundreds and hundreds of hours of his lectures on YouTube talking about psychology, philosophy, religion, films, social dynamics, dominance hierarchies. I mean, the guy is a bundle of wisdom, and people just choose to focus on his politics. It's really unfortunate that for whatever reason eclipses all the other great work that he's done.
Well, it really doesn't. It's just that people that are against his message, that happen to be in power, are retaliating, and it shouldn't be. I mean, he's not a danger in any way. I mean, I've been to his lectures, and I've sat down with him for dinner. He's a wonderful guy. He really is. He cares about people. He's very sensitive, and he gets really upset when people are mistaking his message or his motivation for giving the message. And he shouldn't be silenced. This is a guy that's been a benefit to so many. I mean, he's got, what, 5 million followers, I think, on YouTube, and God knows how many people around the world that listen to him. My daughter, suffered a trauma a year and a half ago, and he was such a benefit to her. She opened her heart to him, and he gave her such good advice. He's not out to hurt anybody. He's just telling the truth. And when you can't tell the truth, what's on your mind, it's very dangerous. It's very, very dangerous. And the same with Andrew Tate. Barring the fact, I mean, if he was involved in criminal behavior and he's held accountable, I have no issue with that. You do the crime, you're ready to do the time. But like I said, at this point, as far as I'm concerned, I haven't seen any evidence. He's innocent until proven guilty. But His message to make, men become men in this world, there's nothing wrong with that. But he got on the wrong side of the wrong people. There's no question. You can't do that today. And hopefully that atmosphere, that current environment that we're in changes. And the only way it changes is if people get upset and say, no, we're not standing for this. Because remember, this is in America here, we're for the people, by the people. We're supposed to be in control. But, things are not the way they should be right now.
Doug, I want to pass the mic to you.
Thanks so much, Noah. Love the show. Michael, what's up? This is Doug. I
Hey, Doug.
really appreciate your personality and the way that you present yourself. I really resonate
Michael,
with
are
it.
you able to hear Doug? I just want to make sure that it's not bugging out.
Yes,
Okay,
I'm
cool.
hearing him.
Sorry about that, Doug.
Okay, great. Thanks for checking. Your personality and the way you present yourself really resonates with me personally, and I think that what you're doing is really amazing. The books you've written, your lecture series, your organization that you have. So I'm really curious. I have just like two parts. Like one, what do the people that you work with or people that you're around kind of like say the most often, that the things that like they really benefited of or have learned from you or have kind of like stuck with them? And then second, like we're in a state right now where the world is kind of often being depressed, the economy's not doing super great. What would be your message to people, basically in general, just in life? Like if you just had something to say to somebody that maybe to inspire them a little bit for what they want to look forward to in 2023.
Well, again, two good questions, and thank you for the compliments. I appreciate that very much. Most people are just, when you're being honest with someone and you're trying to give them information that will benefit them in that life, people really appreciate it. It really resonates with them. I found that out. We created this platform, Mob Ties, and I hope some of you will look into it and see if it's for you. It's mobtiesmovement.com, where we're creating a platform with basically to make you be or to help you be the best possible you that you could be. It's not only myself, but it's other speakers that we have. I mean, Jordan is involved in this. Andrew would have been involved in this. Um, you know, um, a lot of people that we're bringing in that have experience in life that can help you benefit yourself, not only, in your personal life, but also in business. Because look, we're going to have a challenging year this year also. There's no question. 2023 is not going to be a bed of roses. And people need to be prepared for that. They really do. So we've created a platform, to try to help people be the best possible person they could be in every way, shape, or form. And when you're giving that message sincerely, it resonates with people. And when they know you've had experience and you've been through it, and you're talking from experience, they appreciate it and they listen. And that's what motivates me to keep going. Because look, I've spoken to God knows how many people throughout the world, and the messages that I get, just like what some people have said here, Michael, it's resonating with me. It's benefited me. It's helping me. I'll tell you this, and I don't mean to be sappy about this at all, but I've really learned. The greatest satisfaction in life is not from receiving; it's really from giving. When you're giving to people, and what you get back is their compliments and say thank you. I mean, I had a woman, honestly, she just emailed me and she talked to me about her son, that I've been such a motivation for him, that he was on drugs and he had such an issues in his life, and he just listens to me on YouTube and the podcast, and it's straightened out his whole life. I mean, you know what that means when you don't even know that the people that you're helping. So it's so important, and it's what motivates you. And I just thank God that I've been given that platform to where I can share my experiences with people, try to put them in the right direction, and it's helpful to their lives. So, that's one. And then I think your other question is, what message resonates the most? Is that it? Or
Yeah, like when you get feedback, because you're so interactive. It seems like you talk to people a lot. You're at a lot of functions, and you have this great personality that combines like transparency, vulnerability, and strength, and confidence and stuff. And I'm just really resonate with that, and I think it's so powerful. I'm just curious as to what people, yeah, tell you is like what they really think is like most beneficial, or just kind of like give you as feedback for like when you give your talks, or just when you connect with people.
well, I think what it comes down to, and thank you for that, is when people believe that you're sincere, when they see that you can be vulnerable at times. I'll give you an example. I spoke at a hotel casino the other night. It was amazing. There was a lot of older people there. They were all the high rollers in the casino, and it was about 600 or 700 people there. And I gave a talk, and I talked about my life, and then I give them a Q&A afterwards. And I tell them straight out, I said, look, I want you to understand something. I spent 2.5 years in solitary confinement. The first night that I was locked down, it was the worst night of my life. I said, I thought I would never get out of prison again. I was 40 years old. My wife had waited for me for 5 years. I was 13 months on parole, a horrible time. We had two little babies at home. My wife had a breakdown when they locked me up again. Um, I thought I'd never see her. I'd never be free again. And she thought that I'd never be free again. I said, I used to demean people that were suicidal. I said, I called them weak. I don't do that anymore. I said, after that night, I wasn't suicidal. I wasn't that brave, but I wanted to lay my head down on that pillow and not open my eyes again. It was too painful for me to think about my future. You can call me a coward. You can call me weak because I was weak that moment. It was the worst time of my life. And and that's the truth. And I tell people it's okay to hit bottom. It's okay to be weak. It's okay for a man to cry. Look, I've seen my father is a man of a bug man. I saw my dad cry. I saw Joe Colombo cry. I saw a lot of guys that were powerful cry. It's okay to be weak at times, but you recover from that. You have to pick yourself up. I always say this. Frank Sinatra gave one great song. He said, every time I see myself flat on my face, I pick myself up and get back in the race. And that's something that you have to be able to do. You have to have that determination and that will. But it's okay at times to break down and be vulnerable and let people know, hey, this really had a bad impact on me. And because people that are going through that, sometimes they look at that as a weakness in themselves. They feel that they can never come back, that they can never survive. And that's absolutely not true. It's what I tell the guys when I go see them in prison. You know, I tell them straight out, if you want to continue in a life of crime, then get used to your surroundings because this is where you're going to be. And I tell them, if you love your family and you really love them, how could you continue to be in this situation knowing what you're putting them through? I said, I know what I put my family through and I feel horrible about it. I'm not going to do it again. So I think the thing is to let people know that you can be vulnerable, let them know that it's okay, but also let them know that if you have the will and the determination, you can come back from a tough situation. And that's what resonates the most with people. Honestly, I've seen that and I've gotten so many comments about that in my life. And look, I got to tell you something. I believe this. Behind every good man, there's a strong woman or a better woman. If it wasn't for my wife, she's been, my rock. She really has throughout it all. Even at times when she got weak, she got strong, and she was a motivating factor for me. So again, having the right partner, having the right people around you. I've had guys that were drug addicts and they've come back. They became people of faith and they've come back from a bad situation. They'll look at me, they say, Michael, what can I do with my life? I said, what do you mean, what could you do? I said, you came back from a bad situation. Who better to minister and help people that have gone through it than you? You have credibility. Credibility is 90% of everything. When you've been through it, you've done that, and you've seen it, people tend to listen to you. And that's been my story because of what I've been through and because I've able to survive and with the help of God and the people around me, transform myself. It's very inspiring to people because look, we're all going through something. And, I've talked to crowds that all different crowds, you name it, from all over the world, people that were very wealthy, people that were, poverty stricken. Everybody goes through something in their life and they all need motivation or the will to turn themselves around or the belief in themselves that they could. And when they see somebody that's done that, it's very inspiring. And that's what motivates me.
Mike, we appreciate all that insight. Me being 25, that was super, super powerful. Just to hear those words. I'm glad the session was taped. I'll definitely play that back. Continue to follow your podcast, all that great stuff, guys. For those interested in Michael and what he's currently doing now, be sure to check out his website. It's also in his bio. I did pin up his digital collectibles that are offering on OpenSea right now. Michael, to be respectful of your time, how much longer would you like to be with us on the stage?
I'm good for another 15, 20 minutes if you're okay with that.
Perfect. We appreciate your time once again. Noah, back to you.
Yeah, no, I think we have a good flow of questions from the audience at this point, and we've gone through high-level bullet points of Michael's story, and Michael's redemption arc has been incredible, quite inspiring, Mike. And thank you for sharing that with us. Tout, Mike's yours, sir.
Hey, Michael, just a question, and this is a little bit off topic. It might be back. I wanted to ask it earlier on. Was there, leaving med school and helping your father after his ordeal? It sounds a lot like the story of Michael Corleone leaving the Marines. So from your knowledge, did they use your story as inspiration for The Godfather in any manner, or was that kind of like something different?
I've been asked that question so many times because the parallels obviously are there. I don't know. I mean, I've never spoken to Coppola about it or Mario Puzo, so I don't think so. I think that was just an original story written by himself because, back in the 70s, I was just starting out in life, so it wasn't like, I had, a life that was out there that everybody could look at. But the parallels are definitely there. We were on the same road, and then we got sidetracked because of something that happened with our fathers. But I get asked that all the time. Trust me.
Michael, I actually recently, I was a little bit late to the game, but I watched the entire Sopranos series. My girlfriend got me on it, and I was always curious, how accurate is the Sopranos at depicting the life that you lived?
Well, let me start out with this right away so you understand my perception of that series. First of all, I thought it was brilliant. It was a groundbreaking series. It was brilliant. What really attracted me to the series was the dynamic of the family life because it resonated with me. Obviously, I mean, a lot of people don't look at mobsters that they have a family and that they don't go through the same things that other people do. Maybe differently, maybe a little bit more intense, but we have families too. Um, but I will tell you this, as far as authenticity, and believe me, Tony Soprano was terrific. The acting was great. The writing was great. Was it really realistic in terms of the business that they did? Yes and no. Some things yes, a lot of things no. But let me give you this blanket understanding. If a mob guy, especially a boss, was ever visiting a psychiatrist, he would be in the trunk of the car by the end of the week, along with the psychiatrist. You can never, ever be visiting a psychiatrist and people believing that you might be sharing secrets of that life. It would never happen. So, based upon that premise alone, the series was not authentic. But again, taking that away, because it was a great storyline. I mean, I thought it was brilliantly written in that regard. But taking that away, I mean, it was enjoyable. I mean, I watched it, and obviously I've seen it, I've reviewed it, on my site a few times, but it was brilliant. It was groundbreaking series.
Michael, what about The Godfather or Goodfellas?
Okay. Look, The Godfather, brilliant. Probably, one of the best movies. Well, definitely one of the best movies ever made. Was it realistic? It was brilliantly acted, of course, brilliantly written and directed. Um, was it authentic? Well, the son doesn't always take after the father in that regard. The consigliere, Robert Duvall, in reality, he wouldn't have been the consigliere because you have to be Italian. You have to be a made guy to be the consigliere. And he was obviously not Italian. He was a lawyer. So that wasn't realistic. But, the movie was brilliant. I mean, what could you say? Godfather 1 and 2 were brilliant. The third one, I think they lost it. But 1 and 2 are brilliant. Goodfellas, fairly authentic. I knew most all of those guys. I was friendly with Jimmy Burke. I knew Henry Hill well. Paulie Vario was like an uncle to me. I knew him well. They mentioned me in Goodfellas, so pretty well done. Probably the most authentic. But my favorite mob movie, believe it or not, as far as authenticity, was the 1996 HBO movie that starred Armand Assante and Anthony Quinn. It was very realistic. Most of the script was written right off of the tapes that were in the Ravenite Club and some of the tapes on John Gotti. It was just brilliant. There was a scene in there from Anthony Quinn that I just got I got the chills when I
Hey, what
watched
was
it.
the
It was
show's
so.
name, Michael? Sorry.
What was that?
What was the movie's name or the show's
It was
name?
it was called Gotti, and it was not the last one with John Travolta, but it was on HBO. It was the HBO Gotti with Armand Assante. It's on YouTube. You can watch the whole movie on YouTube. Brilliant, and I really recommend it. Armand and I became friends because I recommended that film so much. He got in contact with me. We've become friends since then. But it was brilliantly done and very accurate.
Got to check that out. Acti, you have a question for Michael.
Yeah, thank you so much. I've been listening in, Michael. Thank you for, bringing so much wisdom into the space here. And I speak for everyone here. I think when I want to thank you for, just being here and being real and keeping it 100%. We can all appreciate your honesty. And I saw you talking about movies and everything, and I wanted to ask you, like, do you get to disconnect from all these activities that you do? Do you get to just sit down and enjoy a book or a movie or a cigar or whatever your poison is?
Well, thank you very much for the kind words. I appreciate that. And the answer is yes, I do. Especially now as I've gotten older in life. I really cherish time with my wife and my family. We were in Napa Valley last week. As my, in my family, we never had birthdays. We had birth months, and then as they got older, it came to birth weeks, and then now it's birth weekends. So they love to celebrate their birthdays, with the exception of me. I mean, I have my birthday, and that's it. But they love to celebrate. So I took my one of my daughters, well, actually two of my daughters, one of their birthdays, and my son and my wife. And we went up to Napa Valley for 4 days, and we just relaxed and did some wine tastings. And I try to break away as often as I can. And yeah, I'm very busy. There is a demand on my time, but I don't think I'll ever slow down to I don't think I'll ever retire. Let's put it that way, because I enjoy what I'm doing. I do believe this, I believe that to those who have been given much, much is expected in return. And I've been, one of the most blessed through all the challenges and all the struggles. I've been extremely blessed and extremely fortunate to be alive and to be free, and I just feel a responsibility to give back when people are, asking for my time or some of the experiences or some of the wisdom that I might have. So, I enjoy it, and but I do make time. My wife and family demand that, so I have to give it back to them. But it's all good.
Michael, you highlighted the importance of men having positive influences, strong male figures in their lives, and I feel like a lot of men don't have that, which is why uh, people like Jordan Peterson are extremely popular. And for better or worse, whether you like him or not, Andrew Tate speaks to a lot of young men. But let's say you have a young man who's 18, right out of high school, and doesn't have much direction, doesn't have much drive, but they know they want to do something with their life. Uh, what would be your advice to them? I think a lot of people listening fall under this umbrella, and they would love to hear from someone that's done it all.
Well, let me tell you this. I think the root problem, and again, I don't say this to be offensive, and I don't know why people take it the wrong way when it's really so obvious. The root problem of a lot of the issues that we have in America today is the breakup of the family. It's becoming increasingly more difficult to raise children in this day of unlimited information, good, bad, online. There's so much information, and when young men and women, young men and women don't grow up with the right mentors, the right people giving them advice, without a father in the home. Listen, I looked up to my dad. My dad was a criminal, but he taught me the right way. He really did. He taught me to respect women. He taught me how to keep my mouth shut, not, talk negative about people. He taught me how not to pass judgment on people, always be a good listener. Things that were so valuable for me throughout my life. A lot of these young men and women don't have that training. They go out into the world, and they have more negative influences at their fingertips on their cell phones than I ever had as a kid growing up. And they have nobody to give them right direction. It is so important today, to be a mentor to these young men and women. It's so important. It's vital. People need it. And I encourage a lot of men, I tell them, listen, these young people that are going through this stuff now, we're responsible. We created the environment that they're in today, and we're responsible to give back to them because they are the future of America, like it or not. Get realistic about it. So, and I tell young men, I mean, look, I have so many messages. Again, I tell them, listen, surround yourself with the right people. Oftentimes I'll go into a high school or even a grammar school and I'll see on the wall, you can be anything you want to be, just follow your dreams. And, I tell them that's not always true. And the people, so what do you mean by that? I said, let me tell you what. When I was a kid, I was a diehard Yankee fan. I still am. I said I was a baseball nut. My idol was Mickey Mantle. I wanted to play center field for the New York Yankees. I had only one problem. And they said, what was that? I said, I wasn't good enough. I couldn't have fulfilled that dream no matter how much I wanted to. But I found out that I did have certain, gifts in life, certain talents that I was able to use to my benefit. And that's what you have to look for. You have a gift, you have a talent, everybody does. That's the one that you have to exploit and use. And who's going to show you that? Well, you need an education. You need a mentor around you to try to bring that out in you. You need the drive, you need the determination, but somebody's got to lead the way and show you until you're ready and capable on your own to do what you have to do. That's why these young men and women need mentors. If you see some of the statistics today, the negative statistics on young men and women that don't have a father in the house, especially, it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. And it's all because they don't have good upbringing. And they don't look. My son, Michael Jr., I have 7 kids. I have 2 boys, 5 daughters. My son, even when I was in prison, he had the best people around him. My in laws were terrific. My mother, he went to the best schools. He was part of the church, everything, right? He grew up in a great environment. I come home. I can't tell you how much trouble I had with this kid. I communicate for a living. I couldn't communicate with my son. He went off. He was doing drugs. He was a crazy stage in his life. And my wife used to tell me, he's a late bloomer. Let's pray for him and just keep giving him the right information, which we did. And he grew out of it. But that was in the best of situations. So imagine these kids that don't have that. Who's going to help them get out of the dilemma that they might be living in? So that's why it's so important to have a mentor, to have someone. And unfortunately, if you don't have it in your own house, you have to seek it elsewhere.
And Michael, that's where my question lies. A lot of people don't have that, and they desperately need it. So, where can they seek it out? Right? I know you said you're developing a program with Jordan Peterson, and Andrew Tate was supposed to be part of it. He's not currently, but where are some places where people can seek those types of mentors and seek that guidance?
Well, I would pray that people look. I have what I call a community. It's my inner circle. And I'll tell you, I was so satisfied. I didn't realize what was going to happen when I created this inner circle where we provide courses, mentorship. They get access to me, several times a month. But what I didn't realize was going to happen is that they became a community among themselves, where they started helping one another out, started sharing ideas. It's become a family. I was like blown away in how these people just bonded with one another in a very positive way. And then, of course, myself and my team were able to add to that and light and direct, the rest of it. Now we've created an even larger platform in Mob Ties where we're creating this community where not only are we becoming mentors and giving great advice, and people like Grant Cardone and Jordan Peterson and a bunch of others, Tommy Matoli, you may not know who he was, but a heavyweight in the industry. A lot of great people, even Mike Tyson, are coming aboard, and we're going to give the benefit of our experience and our knowledge to people. And they're going to start to bond with one another just the way they have in the inner circle. And we're going to teach these young men how to be successful, how to be the best possible person they can be. And women, we're going to inspire them in what to look for in a man and what to demand in a man so that he treats you right. He becomes a responsible individual, a good parent, because that's what we need. We need communities and platforms like this. And Mob Ties, that's the name we used again because people are attracted to that. And listen, Andrew Tate had 143,000 men in his platform. So the message he had with men was resonating. And I'm not talking about the bad stuff, about men being men. And we need that today. And hopefully we're picking up, in a different way. Because again, look, I have 5 daughters. I've created a standard in their life in the way I treat their mother, and they know what to look for in a guy. 2 of them are married already, so and the others have had a lot of success with their boyfriends, because I tell them this is how a guy's got to treat you, and that's it. And a good guy is going to understand that, and he's going to be responsible, and you're going to have a good mate, and he's going to, if you get together, he's going to be a good husband, a good provider, a good father to your children, and you in turn are going to do your job as a woman. It doesn't go one way. So people need to understand this, and that's the platform that we're creating. I'm devoting the rest of my life to this, quite honestly.
It's beautifully put, Michael, and I hope that more and more men find programs like Mob Ties, find that infrastructure, because we do need stronger men with good guidance, and hopefully have male figures like you set them up on the right path. Anthony, I know you want to ask a question. I see your hand up. I know Michael's got a bit more time left, not so much, but let's get the mic over to you, and then we'll wrap things up here.
I just wanted to commend you for your work, Michael. That's outstanding to hear everything you're doing and building a community like that. I wanted to kind of touch on that a little bit further and embellish a little bit and kind of answer Noah's question a little bit further too, just from an outside perspective looking in. As I commend you for your work, I also implore every other man in this space right now to look out for other men like that and become those mentors yourselves and find ways to be able to play a role in other people's lives. I personally don't talk too much about my background, but knowing some of the people that are here right now, I personally grew up without a father, kind of in a situation where I was surrounded by bikers and they were kind of my family, and found myself with some negative role models. But I was fortunate enough personally to be blessed with positive role models through sports and through the workplace. And because of other men that played roles in my life, I was able to get myself on track and get down the right path because of gentlemen like yourself, Michael. And now personally, I do look to find that role in other people's lives. But anybody who has any kind of position in life where they feel like they're on the right path, you can be a mentor and you could do that for somebody else as well. So I do implore everybody to look for those opportunities and try and better other people's lives as well.
Yeah, that was very well said. And like I said earlier, the satisfaction that you get, and I mean that in a very positive way, the good feeling you get when you're able to help and mentor others and see them get their life straightened out and get on the right track and become a productive member of society and treat people the right way. It's overwhelming in many ways. It's the greatest feeling to know that you're able to do that and give that to someone. And so I encourage everybody, get yourself straightened out and then be the best possible person you can be for others. And that's how community grows. That's how things change. That's how things get better. It's from like the inside out that you have to work. And one thing, I will say this, um, that's very upsetting for me. I have never seen in my lifetime the nation so divided. The divisiveness is just horrible and it's scary. And why does this happen? It comes from the top. When our politicians are constantly at each other's throats and calling each other names and doing it so publicly and having such arrogant attitudes towards one another, they show no togetherness, no trying to work things out. Well, that trickles down to all of us, and the divisiveness starts at the top. And listen, I won't, I don't hold back. I was a Donald Trump supporter because of his policies, not his personality. But I will say this, he was very divisive. Now, a lot of people defend him and say, he fought back because he was always being, hammered by the other side, which is true. But Donald did not know how to be a diplomat. He didn't know how to deal with people. He didn't know how to respond. And as a result, the back and forth got so out of hand. And I think he really hurt himself because in the end, people said, enough of this. Even I said enough of this. And I was a supporter of his policies because I thought his policies in many ways were good for America. Everybody makes mistakes. And of course, nothing is perfect. But policy wise, it was good. We thrived during his time in a big way, but he was so divisive, and people on the other side so divisive. They need to stop that. They need to. Even our current president, who came in and said, I'm going to be an inclusive president. Well, it's not true. It hasn't been true. And that's what's dangerous in America. I mean, I've never seen families fighting with one another. I've heard so many stories as I travel the country how people are at each other's throats within the family because they have different political views. It shouldn't be that way. When I grew up, honestly, Democrats and Republicans, of course, we always had them, but there wasn't much of a difference in their ideology. There really wasn't. And nobody was at each other's throat because you were a Democrat or you were a Republican. Hey, I vote Democrat, I vote Republican. This is the party. You were pretty much the same. You wanted the same things. There might have been a little different in the ideology, but nobody was at each other's throats like it is today. It's become so divisive. And that's the most upsetting thing to me. So what are my point? We as a community, we can't be divided among one another. We can have different beliefs. It's okay. We're supposed to share different beliefs with one another. That's what a democracy, a republic is all about. We're not robots. We don't all think the same, but we shouldn't be at odds and so divisive and at each other's throats and hatred comes out and venom comes out because you disagree ideologically with someone. And look, I am a very optimistic person. I really am. I always see the good side of, to me, the glass is always half full. But I believe this country is in dire trouble. And unless from the ground up we start to come together as a community, I think this is not going to be the same America in a short time from now. And I'm worried about that again because of my kids and grandchildren that have to live in this country. But hopefully I'm making my point. So if we can somehow come together and maybe one person at a time, one body at a time that you influence in a positive way, and they go on and do that in their community, you never know how many people you could be impacting in the right way if you have that mindset and that attitude.
Michael, I love that. That was fantastic. Once again, thank you for you and your team for being, very supportive and making this a very easy process for you to join us today. We appreciate both you and your team, guys. Unfortunately, we do have to wrap this up though. But before I like to conclude with saying, Michael, once again, thank you, all the speakers, all the listeners, guys. Before you hop off, please be sure to give Michael a follow. You've been listening here for about the last hour and a half. Please give him a follow. Don't listen to this space without following him. Be sure to check out his website, michaelfranzese.com. Be sure to check out Mob Ties, which I did pin to the top, as well as everything he's currently doing right now, his podcast, his YouTube, which is also Michael Franzese. His Instagram is also the same handle. He's creating a lot of great content across all platforms. Be sure to follow all those platforms. And yeah, Michael, we appreciate your time once again today. Noah, back to you.
Well,
Michael,
thanks for having me, and thanks for all of you that listened in. I really appreciate it. And hopefully we get to do this again, or maybe you'll jump on one of my platforms and we'll continue to communicate. But I just encourage you, go out there and be the best possible person you can be, and the more influence you can have on someone else to be the same, the better your life is going to be. So God bless all of you, and again, thanks for tuning in.
Michael, you've been an inspiration. Thank you so much for coming on, and God bless you.
Okay, well, guys, God bless.